The inevitability of death is a ghost that looms over all of us. You gonna die. Your friends gonna die. Your mom gonna die. Your dad gonna die. And your characters gotta deal with death too. Death is a powerful tool that you can use to evoke emotion and serious change within your story. And I, Matt the Creative, an immortal and eternal nutjob who has spent hundreds of hours studying the craft of storytelling and creative writing, and I'm going to show you how to write compelling character deaths. So, first, a story of time when I had to deal with death myself. Though I myself am eternal and cursed to forever roam the earth, those around me are not. A good friend of my family and a member of the church I had gone to at the time had died. Let's just call him Mr. Jeeves. Mr. Jeeves was battling a sickness for over a year, and after a long fight, he eventually succumbed. Our entire church had a funeral for him, and a lot of people showed up. While I personally didn't have the closest relationship with Mr. Jeeves, I always remember him pouring into me, telling me that I should be my best self, to always be aspiring to more. He'd offer me nuggets of wisdom when I saw him, like how you should present yourself to new people and make good impressions. I miss him quite a bit. In the same way, death should have the same type of impact on your characters. A good example of this in fiction is the death of Superman. When Superman died fighting Doomsday, the entire world came to a stop to honor him and his legacy. And various Supermen rose to the occasion to fill the void that he had left. It's literally a whole movie that DC made based off of that premise alone. Now, we all agree that death is usually very sad, but inevitable occurrence for everyone but myself. But this isn't always the case. While deaths in your story should be meaningful and evoke emotion, that emotion doesn't always have to be sadness. In fact, it can sometimes do the opposite and evoke happiness, laughter, and joy. Personally, my brothers and I have a unique sense of humor where we laugh hysterically at people just getting ragdolled, offed, and beat senseless, and usually screaming to their deaths. We're terrible people, I know. But getting back on track, death does not always have to be sad. Let's take a quick look at Game of Thrones. Now, within Game of Thrones, people get offed a lot. Death is very, very common. People stay dying, and there are some deaths in there that are actually sad and shocking, like Ned Stark's and everyone during the Red Wedding. But Joffrey? Boy, I was weak as hell. Everyone and their mother wanted that little bitch boy to die and get his penance, and I was straight up clapping when he died. The only one who cried for him was his mom, and honestly, she could die too. Who cares about her? And my friends were laughing with me probably because I was hysterical. But the point is, when a character like Joffrey, a hateable little monkey, gets sent straight to God, and then God sends him straight to hell, you cheer and rejoice. It also allowed for a major turning point in the show. With the king dead and a new one had to be ushered in, that resulted in various powers trying to influence the new and naive King Tommen. Which leads to my next point. Compelling deaths change the flow of the story and other characters, especially when they have deep relationships with other characters. I've talked about One Piece many a time on this channel, and Ace's death probably is the perfect example of everything that I want to teach to you. Ace himself was a character who had a very, very strong tie to the main character, Luffy, being his older brother and someone that Luffy looked up to. Not only did he die gruesomely in front of Luffy, Luffy didn't take that well at all. He passed out from the shock, and even when he did get back up, he damn near killed himself in the process and renounced his worthiness to become the Pirate King, and it forced him to get real and train for 2 whole years. It was a major turning point in his growth, and when you write death, you should take into account who this character knows, their own respective arc, and how other characters will react to their said deaths. Otherwise, you risk making a huge mistake in writing death, which is not having the appropriate response to death. And speaking of making mistakes, let's jump into that real quick. How many stories or films have you seen where someone dies and you don't even bat an eye? Maybe the character was introduced that arc, and you can kind of tell that they were written to die off a bit later. And the stories I've seen, they're usually old, and they're probably going to croak later on during the day. Anyway, which is the opposite of all the character deaths that I mentioned earlier, because we are invested in the characters. We all hated Joffrey. We idolize Superman, and we love Ace. But if the character is just another no-name jobber, then we don't care. Or in my case, if they get ragdolled, I might just pop along laughing at them, which is a big mistake. Make your audience care about the character who's dying. Now, before we move on, ask yourself about any death that you have planned. How exactly are you going to kill that character? When it comes to deaths in storytelling, they are, as we discussed earlier, about how much meaning that they can have regarding other characters. So maybe you just want to find some easy way to kill them off so you can move on with your story. But I'm going to tell you right now, making people die coincidentally for the sake of the plot is possibly one of the most whack and irritating things that you can do. Let's look at Halloween Kills for a second, when the whole town jumps Michael Myers. They just let him get back up. They beat the goofy out this man. And they let him play his whole theme song. And they all died for it. Like, they should have just cut off his head right there. Never do that with your stories. You are just asking to irritate your audience to high hell and deem your story bad. Another example of this is in Naruto during the war arc, where they had all this buildup of Madara. You know, he was the big bad of the story. He was super thematic, climactic character, had this big thematic battle with Naruto and Sasuke, just for him to randomly get offed so that an alien bunny girl wife who can show up. Nigga, I was mad as hell, and I sure as hell wasn't the only one. You do this, and I will personally throw your story into the dumpster, and you along with it. And I'm gonna light the fire for making me so mad. And that is it, y'all. How to write compelling death scenes in stories. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.